First speaking is Sandy Rosenthal with levees.org.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I really can't thank someone for letting us use their property, because what we've got is the site of a levee breach, which is, a very, very sad thing. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers made a tragic mistake when they decided they only needed to drive sheet pilings down behind me to depth of only 17 feet instead of what should have been 45 to 50 feet. They made a tragic mistake because they were trying to cut costs. They were trying to figure out a way to do it cheaper. And they figured by only driving down sheet piles down 17 feet that they would save $100 million. And they did this in not just the London, but also the 17th and the Industrial Canal. On August 29, 2005, when these canal walls, that just like behind us, breached when water was still 5 feet from the tops of the walls, there was a much higher price to pay than that $100 million. After these levee breaks, it became a common idea that maybe if the flood protection authorities, those 8 commissioners, maybe if some of them had engineering experience, and maybe if the flood protection, the local sponsors, was regional instead of parish by parish, as it was before Katrina. And maybe if the levee authorities could focus only on flood protection and didn't have to worry about managing their real estate, maybe the local levee boards could have told the Corps how to build levees right. It was an idea, and we'll never know. But one thing that was universally agreed upon, that after Katrina, a new paradigm of levee board governance was necessary to protect a major metropolitan city like New Orleans. So the legislation was passed. Over 80% of those who went to the polls agreed that we needed a new paradigm of levee board governance. And this new levee board legislation was the first of its kind in the entire country. No other state in the nation has anything like what we have in Louisiana. It put Louisiana actually as a leader in levee board governance. No other levee board in the entire country has levee boards with experts on their board, has levee boards that have regional governance, and levee boards that only focus on flood protection and nothing else. That includes all those levee boards along the Mississippi, the Ohio, and the Missouri River. Only in Louisiana do we have this. This was brand new legislation. I asked Senator Boasso, who crafted the legislation, what model did you follow when you created this legislation? He said there weren't any. I made it up, he said. So naturally, with this brand shining new legislation, there's bound to be problems with it. There's bound to be places and loopholes that need to be closed. One of the most difficult challenges that the nominating committee faced after Katrina was finding qualified applicants to fill these positions. There is a very, very complex matrix of requirements that must be followed as defined by the levee board legislation. There has to be engineers and hydrologists and experts from each parish. There can be no more than one per parish. There has to be somebody from out of state. A very, very complex matrix of requirements. Adding to that difficulty is the law that you shall not be paid for your service. All of the levee board commissioners serve for no compensation, and making it probably most difficult of all is all of these commissioners have to do a full financial disclosure. I can't imagine anyone who would want to do a full financial disclosure, but that's a requirement. So every single year the nominating committee is faced with an enormous challenge of finding qualified applicants to fill the levee board positions of the flood protection authorities east and west. So we find it interesting that Senator Adley, in his infinite wisdom, has decided to craft new legislation that would say, from now on, instead of 1 or 2 applicants per spot, it shall be 3. Keep in mind, it's already enormously difficult to find qualified applicants, but Senator Adley's legislation has changed that number to 3. It seems simple to me that Senator Adley is not crafting this legislation because he's worried about the safety of the residents who live in this city. He is not worried It seems simple to me about the safety of Ms. Carmen Owens, who lives right across the street. It seems to me, very simple to me, that this legislation is not about safety for our residents. It's about something, an agenda, that is quite different. Now, I've spoken enough, and I'm going to bring to the mic the next person who would like to speak.
Good morning. My name is Carmen Owens, and I'm a senior citizen, retired for a number of years now. And this was my dream retirement neighborhood. It was a beautiful neighborhood, beautiful landscape, beautiful houses. You didn't even know that the levee existed because of all the landscaping in the houses. You could not see the levee. So imagine my surprise when I evacuated to northern Louisiana, and my nephew, who works for the Air Force in Jacksonville, Florida, called me to tell me about the vacant lot across the street from my house. I said, there is no vacant lot. He said, I'm trying to tell you there is now. The house that was there is now in your driveway on this land. So my house was 4 years old. I wasn't real concerned because I knew that I could rebuild. Unfortunately, when I contacted the insurance company, I was told that it was a man-made disaster and that I would not be able to recoup any insurance payments. So it's been a real long haul. It's been a real nightmare. I'm now in serious debt for redoing my house, which I owned outright before the hurricane. We had a public official who is no longer in office to tell us, standing at the very next corner, that the Corps of Engineers was responsible and that there were funds set aside to redo the streets in this area because they use this as a staging area. These streets were not this way. Because they used it as a staging area, it destroyed the streets. Those streets look as though the hurricane happened yesterday. If I had a quarter for every tour bus, for every person that came through this area, I could personally redo these streets. They all are in shock to think that nothing has been done to this neighborhood. And as you can see, I have no neighbors for the most part. There are very few that were able to come back. So it's very disheartening for me that the Corps of Engineers has taken no responsibility for this neighborhood or this disaster. I'm just hoping that if we get enough into the public eye, that one day something may be done for this neighborhood. I don't think I'll live long enough to see it restored, but I do hope that my children and my grandchildren will. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Owens.
Hello, my name's Darryl Malek-Wiley with Sierra Club. More than 8 years ago, when Hurricane Katrina hit the city of New Orleans, before that the levee board was not as qualified as the current Southeast Flood Protection Authority East is. The levee board since Katrina has made strides to protect citizens of Metro New Orleans. They have worked to build a system that will protect us from a storm 1 in 100, which is, we know we want to have better protection, but that's better than what we had before Katrina. And we know that it seems to us that the bill introduced by Senator Adley to add additional people to the levee board to change the nomination committee has an agenda behind it that doesn't talk at all about protecting the citizens of New Orleans from flood, but it talks about protecting big oil, gas, and pipeline companies from litigation. We, myself, the Sierra Club, feel Senator Adley is dead wrong. We need to have a well-qualified levee board to continue to protect Louisiana. the whole issue with the lawsuit against the 97 oil, gas, and pipeline companies is a separate issue. That should be determined in the courts. Polling has shown that Polling has shown that over 93% of people polled below Interstate 10 felt the same way, that the court system should handle this issue in regard to liability of the oil companies. And as a member of the Sierra Club, as a member of the newly formed Green Army, we will be taking a message to Baton Rouge next Saturday, the 8th of March, and all through the session, that it is time to stop playing politics with people's lives in New Orleans and quit messing around with the levee board. This situation needs to stop, and we need to focus on what the issue is: keeping people safe in New Orleans, Metro New Orleans, and the separate issue is getting the oil and gas companies to pay for the damage they caused to the wetlands, and we don't need to tie the two together. Thank you.
Well, we're here today because we are not going to let a state senator who lives 200 miles away from this levee play politics with our protection. My name is Ann Rolfes. I'm with the Louisiana Bucket Brigade, and I am a very proud member of the Green Army. And I think you can see by both the assortment of groups that are here today, as well as all the latest activity, both in the last few weeks and that is yet to come in the legislature, that the environmental community is united in a way that I've never seen before. I've been here doing this work since 1999, and the Green Army has brought us all together. We each have our specialty, and yet we are focused like a laser. And for the next several months, our laser is focused on our state legislature. And at this moment, our laser is focused on Senator Adley's completely misguided bill. We have communicated with every member of the state legislature to let them know to be on the lookout for this bill, to not only vote against it, but to encourage Senator Adley to pull the bill. My organization has communicated with the legislators. I know that levees.org has also, and so have others in our coalition. The bottom line is that our levees should be as strong as possible, that we shouldn't play politics with those levees, and we certainly shouldn't let a man who is in no danger of flooding be the architect of pulling apart our levee board. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Ann.
Good morning. I'm Steve Murchie. I'm the campaign director for the Gulf Restoration Network. Gulf Restoration Network is supportive of the Levee Board's efforts to hold the oil and gas industry accountable. We have an administration in place that has a completely different priority. A prime example of that actually happened yesterday at the CPRA meeting, where they approved $775 or so million in an annual plan, and included in that were $71 million worth of projects that will go to plug oil and gas canals. That's exactly the kind of damage to our wetlands and our coast that the oil and gas industry should be paying for, rather than taxpayers of Louisiana and the rest of the country. And so, ever since the Levee Board filed their litigation last summer, we've been anticipating fights in the state legislature. This is probably the first of many to come. Several of our speakers have spoken about the bill, but one important thing to remember about it is we've already seen the governor try to pack the levee boards with his appointees who pass a political litmus test of defending the oil and gas industry's interests. This legislation from Senator Adley would allow the governor to reject whatever nominees are put forward until he gets one of his approval that will fulfill his agenda. And so giving the governor veto power over who sits on the levee boards is exactly the wrong direction to go. The administration's priorities are clear. It's defending the interests of the oil and gas industry. We need an independent levee board that is going to look out for the people of this area's interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
So if we have any questions for any of the speakers?
Are y'all, either as a group or your individual organizations, going to be filing any legislation of your own, or is the focus right now stopping any
We've had numerous meetings of the Green Army, all the different organizations. we are working on a package of bills that will address a number of issues, not just the levee board. We're looking at water extraction of the aquifer in Baton Rouge by Exxon and Georgia Gulf, the Bayou Corn and salt domes regulation. So we're putting together a broad series of proposed legislation focused around protecting our water in Louisiana. And after the session starts, we'll probably have another press conference to talk about specific bill numbers and that sort of stuff.
Have you seen any other legislation proposed that would either directly or indirectly move to scuttle the lawsuit?
Not yet. They have to have, the session, I think the last day to introduce legislation is the 10th of March, so we don't know what's going to happen between now and then.
Can I ask Sandy? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Sandy, I'm guessing that the senator is going to say that by increasing the qualifications for the levee board increases the level of safety. So can you answer that? Come back, which I assume is coming.
I've been closely involved with the work of the nominating committee since day one. I've even been actually involved in trying to find applicants to fill those positions. And every single year since 2006, it has been enormously difficult to find these qualified applicants. It's well-intentioned legislation. The legislation is not perfect as written. And to require 3 applicants per vacancy, it looks to me like it's more likely to get someone less qualified than someone more qualified. What if, for example, now I am guesstimating here, but what if we can't find 3 applicants for a particular position? And what if only 2 are submitted because you cannot find a third? Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that the governor can appoint anyone, even someone not qualified, anyone he wants? I mean, it is conjecture at this point, but this is not something that we can allow to go out there and let's see what happens. Okay.
Yeah, just to add to that, I mean, Senator Adley's bill, we have copies of it if anybody wants to take a look line by line at it, but it appears to be an effort to set the nominating committee up to fail, which then gives the governor the authority to choose their nominees. But it's important to remember that if you game out how this works, the levee board can come up with 3 applicants and submit it to the governor. The governor could reject all 3 of them. They then have to go through the process all over again and come up with 3 more, and rejection until the governor gets one that they approve of. And that's certainly not independence from my perspective.
As it stands now, the 2 applicants you get if they're rejected, who takes that seat? Does it automatically get named by the governor? Who fills in that seat?
As I alluded to earlier, we don't really know the answer. It is conjecture at this point. The law as written has probably too many loopholes in it. If anything, it needs to be strengthened and not weakened. And as far as we can see, this legislation proposed by Senator Adley would do the opposite and weaken.
Any other questions?
This is a dumb technical question.
Right.
Are all your all's organizations members of the Green Army, or is this a Green Army?
This is, all these different groups here are members of the Green Army, but it is each individual group speaking out today. And as a collective, we are members of the Green Army, which is
Kind of a loose alliance.
very loose alliance, yes.
Really, the only thing uniting us is the name.
Fair enough.
Well, and the interest.
And the interest and the leader.
I think the way that the sort of tagline is clean water, clean air, safe food.
Not all of the people that the gas industry has outside this is a state that's set us back significantly on restoring our coastal wetlands, on all kinds of different things, and we need that to change.
And I have flyers for our event next Saturday that has a list of all the different groups that have joined the Green Army to date, if you want that. So.
Yeah, there's no secret handshake.
Oh, nobody's told you?
I'm always the last to know.
Thought you were a member.
Any other questions?
I guess just to be clear,
Okay.
this you feel is pushback by the oil and gas industry for the legislation filed by the levee board to make the oil and gas industry pay for restoring the wetlands.
Yes.
This is
It would
pushback.
appear so.
It would appear so, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's a clear pattern. I mean, the governor has already tried to pack the board with nominees of his choosing that have come right out and opposed the lawsuit. And so this is just the next step in giving the governor more ability to put,
And I think the relationships matter too. If you look at Robert Adley, he's been on the board of the Louisiana Oil and Gas Association, which has been leading the charge in opposition to this lawsuit. And so he's been on the board. We have a touching picture that I already gave you, but I can give the others, of Senator Adley and the president of the Oil and Gas Association together. So there's no question that that's what this bill is about.
Can you speak to how many vacancies come up on the East Board?
I don't know exactly.
Yeah, and one piece of legislation that we're definitely introducing looks at the nominating committee and trying to, if you serve on the flood authorities, Southeast Flood Authority East, you have very specific ethic requirements. If you serve on the nominating committee, those requirements are not in place. And we felt that some of the members of the nominating committee, if they were held to the same standards of the levee board, would have to recluse themselves in the latest round of nominations they made. Okay. Thank you very much.